You use it every single day. You've held it thousands of times, and you've never once stopped to ask, why four? Not three, not five, not six, always four. And the answer, once you hear it, is going to bother you every time you sit down to eat. For most of human history, the fork didn't exist. People ate with their hands, with knives, with spoons. The fork was considered unnecessary, even offensive. When forks first appeared in Europe, around the 11th century, the Catholic Church called them an insult to God. The argument was simple. If God gave you fingers, why would you need a metal replacement? One Byzantine princess brought forks to Venice. The entire city mocked her. She died shortly after from an illness. And the church said it was divine punishment for using a fork. So how did we go from forks are evil to four tines being the global standard? The answer involves a steel industry, a class war, and one very specific decade in history. The earliest forks had just two tines. Long, sharp, pointed. They looked less like eating utensils and more like small weapons, because that's basically what they were. Two-tine forks were used to hold meat in place while you cut it with a knife. They weren't for bringing food to your mouth. They were tools, nothing more. Then came three-tines. Three-tine forks started appearing in the 18th century, mostly in wealthy European households. The extra tine made it easier to scoop food, not just spear it. But three-tines had a problem. Food kept falling through the gaps. Rice, peas, small vegetables. Anything that wasn't a large chunk of meat was basically impossible to eat cleanly. Which brings us to four. Four tines solved the gap problem. The spacing was narrow enough to hold smaller foods, but wide enough to still function as a proper utensil. It was, mathematically, the most efficient design. But here's where it gets interesting. Because efficiency had nothing to do with why four tines became the standard, the Industrial Revolution changed everything. In the early 1800s, manufacturing steel became cheaper. Producing silverware at mass scale became possible for the first time. And suddenly, forks weren't just for the wealthy. The middle class wanted them. Working class families wanted them. Everyone wanted to eat like the elite. But here's the problem. Manufacturers faced, there was no standard. Some forks had two tines, some had three, some had four, some had five. There was no agreement. Factories needed to pick one design and produce it at massive scale to keep costs low. So in the mid-1800s, particularly in Britain and America, manufacturers quietly standardized around four tines. Not because of science, not because of royal decree, not because someone proved it was better, but because four tines was the easiest design to produce consistently at industrial scale. The machinery of the time could stamp out four-tine forks faster and more uniformly than any other design. It was cheaper, it was faster, it was scalable. And once one major manufacturer chose four, competitors followed. Because if you made three-tine forks and your competitor sold four-tine forks cheaper, you lost. The four-tine fork didn't win because it was the best. It won because it was the most profitable to make. But there's another layer to this story, and this one is a little darker. As forks spread to the middle and working classes, the upper class needed a new way to signal status. If everyone has a four-tine fork, how do you show that you're above everyone? The answer was etiquette. The 19th century saw an explosion of dining rules. Which fork to use for salad? Which fork for the main course? Which fork for dessert? How to hold it? How to place it when you're done? None of these rules existed before mass production. They were invented, almost entirely, to create a social barrier. To make sure that even if a working-class family could afford a fork, they would still embarrass themselves at a formal dinner by using the wrong one. The fork became a class weapon, a simple piece of metal with four tines used to sort people into categories. Who belongs at this table and who doesn't? So next time you pick up a fork, remember that its four tines weren't chosen by scientists or designers or culinary experts. They were chosen by factory owners trying to maximize profit. And the rules about how to use it were invented by people trying to keep others out. Simple object. Not such a simple story. If this made you look at something ordinary differently, you're in the right place. Next video. We're looking at something you drink every morning, and the accidental discovery that almost didn't happen. Subscribe so you don't miss it.